thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Goffman, for being here and for your willingness to continue to serve. And actually, this most recent unanimous consent request raises a really important point. I was a utility regulator through a lot of the SOx, NOx, mercury, particulate matter reductions, and guess what we did in those days? We had cooperative federalism where the federal agencies and the state agencies and the stakeholders were all in it together. They spent millions and billions of dollars to make these upgrades for the benefit of the people we serve, and we didn't have what we see today, which brings me to my first point and question that I wanted to raise with you, because as a strong advocate of cooperative federalism, I just think we're missing the opportunity, and I'm going to go back to something you and I have talked about before, and that was your proposed Clean Power Plan rule back in the day that would have required North Dakota to reduce its emissions 11%. Now, we weren't crazy about that, and our stakeholders weren't crazy about it, but we knew it was doable, and we were willing to do our part. And then when the final rule came out, it was 400% greater than the 11%, the bait and switch that I've talked about before, to 45%, which was absolutely, well, it was federalism the way it's not supposed to be done. And the last time you were here, which was May of last year, so 9 months ago, I asked you a question about working with my state regulators, the 3 public service commissioners, our DEQ director, and you said something to the effect that, I'm glad you'd asked that because I was going to ask you for their contact information so we could reach out. So I reached out to them last week. And in the last 9 months, they've not heard from you or anybody in your shop to talk about the replacement rule. Are they wrong? Did they just forget? Or did you forget? Or could you clear this up for me?
Thank you for pointing that out, Senator. And I have to say I'm disappointed in myself and in not having ensured that we made those contacts. But I hope you and your colleagues in North Dakota are willing to go with better late than never. We are going to be moving forward with, as I mentioned to Senator Cardin, a proposal to address mercury emissions from the power sector. And we expect to be moving forward later this spring with a proposal to address CO2 emissions. And what I anticipate we'll do, and now that you've brought this up, I'll make sure we'll do, is as those proposals are being publicly shared for comment well before we finalize them, we will engage directly with your colleagues in North Dakota. Up until this point, a number of senior people in the Office of Air and Radiation have engaged in lots of discussions across the country. I think I may have mentioned to you last time that we've engaged with the utility commissioners through NARUC. And I believe when Senator Capito and I were talking about reliability, I mentioned that we also spent a lot of time talking to grid operators.
Yeah, well,
so I had hoped in that casting a very wide net we had captured.
Yeah. Well,
opportunity to talk to.
You didn't, but cooperative federalism needs to be more deliberate than reaching out to NARUC, which I was a member of NARUC for half of my term. I was always a member. I just came to the realization they tend to gravitate to the lowest common denominator and then have nice meetings. But I think you need to reach out. You can't just talk to people you agree with. And that's my sense, is you're not talking to people that actually do this every single day. But all of that said, quickly, I do want to address another problem or potential problem, and that is the methane rule, the proposed methane rule. You know, North Dakota has stricter requirements than any federal rule, but it does require doubling, the paperwork. In fact, in North Dakota, on our methane, of course, being a byproduct of oil production, and so the flaring, which is one of the flaring is one of the viable, not the ideal, of course, method of dealing with venting, but 95% of ours is captured on state and private land. 59% on federal and tribal land. In other words, North Dakota's excellence doesn't really want to yield to federal government mediocrity. And I just say, and I'll wrap up and then we can get deeper into it in the next round. But again, federalism, cooperative federalism would go a long way if you didn't impose new restrictions on the excellent states, but rather work with them to maybe empower them a little more at the local level, and you might get a better outcome. The problem is, Senator Capito raised the issue of permitting. Well, permitting is the problem on federal lands, the permitting of the takeaway capacity for what is now being flared, wasted. Anyway, I think in the next round, maybe we can drill down a little more on that one, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Good. You want me to respond to you very, very briefly to that? Just very briefly.
Methane?
Just to say that I remember Senator Cramer citing the performance of operators in North Dakota, both on private land and public land, in terms of the efficiency in avoiding methane escape, methane leaks. One of the things we're trying to do with the federal rule is raise the floor for everybody else. And in many ways, our proposals are based on successful practices that are already in place in states like North Dakota.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator Cramer. Thank you for bringing your expertise and knowledge from a previous part of your life to this